Morning, class. Sorry I can't be there again today. I'm recording this about 2 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, yesterday we were talking about the origins of agriculture, and we watched the video, Gun Terms of Steel. Jared Diamond shows a hypothesis about some societies and how they became advanced. And his argument is that they had certain geographic advantages that allowed them to dominate the landscape and become more advanced. And among them was the development of agriculture. So what he really was talking about was the first agricultural revolution, and historically we call it the Neolithic revolution. And that's basically human beings being able to domesticate plants and animals, which led from a shift from a hunting-gathering nomadic society to a sedentary agricultural society. And if we take a look at this map shows us the earliest hearths of agriculture. And if you take a look at it, the earliest hearths were about 9,000 years ago, some of them a little bit older than that. But the map indicates that this process was happening in multiple places at one time. And why do we think that might be the case? There are lots of theories behind that, and some of them are more accepted than others, but generally historians and geographers agree that this shift happened for two main reasons. One, the climate of the world was changing. The world was becoming a little bit drier, and animals were migrating in different patterns. And so human beings were finding themselves having to search longer distances in order to find their food, which primarily was animals. Second, human population was starting to grow a little bit, and there was a strain on these nomadic societies who had gotten very good at hunting and tracking and killing animals, and that allowed the population to grow. And then among that, another part of that too also is a little bit of luck, as Jared Diamond points out, and identifying that certain grains in particular grew well and were easy to plant and were nutritious, and then figuring out how to make them more productive. So this happens, most historians agree, first in Southwest Asia, here along the Fertile Crescent, and then not long after that, around the same time period, again in Central Asia, in the Indus Valley, South Asia, Ganges Valley, East Asia, around the Yangtze River, in Indonesia, Ethiopia, and then also in the Americas. And as you can see, the technology of growing these different types of crops and the domestication of different animals, particularly in Central Asia, leads to this agricultural society that emerges. Now, if you take a look at the list here, one of the questions presented is, which of these are most familiar to you? Which are the least? Why do you think that is? So take a moment, pause the video, and think about which ones are most familiar. Why do you think that's the case? So when I look at this list, I think there's several that are most familiar, particularly the potato, I think maize and corn, but also looking over here, barley, cattle, dog, wheat, oats, pig, bread wheat, olive. These things are very, very, very familiar to me. Chicken. A lot of these things are a regular part of my diet, and I see them around. And a lot of that has to do with a particular moment of diffusion of agricultural products that occurred beginning in 1492. Does that sound familiar? It should. That's the beginning of Columbus's first voyage from Europe to the Americas, and began a process of exchange from the New World to the Old, called the Columbian Exchange. Now, many of the products in Asia had been traded, along paths like the Silk Road, and the connections between these trading societies. And that was one of the other developments that happened in the Neolithic Age, with the development of sedentary society and agriculture and the diversification of the economy came trade. So people started to move into other industries, as Diamond pointed out, and had objects and things that they could trade for other objects in other societies. Africa and Asia were pretty interconnected 500 years ago, but there was virtually no contact with the Americas. Christopher Columbus, through his accidental discovery, if you will, of the New World, unintentionally created an exchange between Europe and the Americas. And not only did people and money and gold go back and forth, but so did plants, animals, and agricultural technology. And so when we see many of the things that we grow in North America, particularly barley, wheat, and oats, really had their origins in Southeast Asia and then eventually in Europe. And again, many of the animals that we see frequently in the United States in particular, like pig and horse and chicken, are not native to this area. And they came from Central Asia and Europe and Southwest Asia. But the Columbian Exchange is important in really changing the landscape of agricultural products around the world. We're coming up on St. Patrick's Day here in a month, and we typically associate the potato, with Ireland. Well, it's not native to there. It grew very well there, but that's a consequence of the Columbian Exchange, and essentially importing that to the British Isles and then growing there. So there's a lot of exchange that happens between there. And so another really important piece of this and of agricultural origin and diffusion is the role of climate. And we need to be able to make the connection between climate regions and different types of agricultural products that might be grown there. So what I'd like you to do there is what we do here in class is investigate these two websites. The first is all about climate. It's a National Geographic website that talks about climate, what it is. It explains different climate regions, what they look like, the characteristics of them. And then the second one is an interactive map here that just connects, it overlays those climate regions, different parts of the world. And I want you to pay particular, attention to where we live and what other areas of the world have a similar climate to where we are. Look at the climate diversity around the world, and then make some connections to the types of crops that are grown in those regions, and think a little bit about why. Why are those crops grown there? Why do they do well? And then finally, after you've investigated that, I'd like you to take a look at these photographs here of different climate regions and see if you can make the connection as to what types of climates do you see here, and then what types of agricultural products or agricultural activities might you expect to see in each of these agricultural regions. And then hopefully everything in my house will be back to normal, and I'll be back to school on Thursday. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, post a comment. Everybody that has already taken the test, feel free to stop the video at this point. If you haven't taken the test and need to make it up, I'm going to talk to you here in a minute. So if you need to make up the exam is located on the blue shelf near the black globe along the wall. You can find the test questions there along with the FRQ. The scantrons are located by the pencil sharpener. Feel free to grab one that has the larger bubbles with 25 questions on the front. Feel free to sit at your seat and take the exam and give it to whoever is covering my class. And then I'll grade your exam as soon as I can. Thanks. Bye.